Hello everyone. So in this video I'm going to be talking about depression and suicide, particularly in light of recent news events, so with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. So if you are sensitive to hearing about those kinds of things, then you might want to stop watching this video. So I'll be talking a bit about that, sharing my own story, because I believe it's a shame that there's still so much stigma and shame attached to just talking about depression, talking about suicide, and I would like to almost shine the light in that sense by sharing my own story and encouraging you that if you are struggling with depression or with suicidal thoughts, to just reach out, get help, and that you are not alone. So I think while it's great that the news has been talking about the recent suicides, I was quite conflicted about doing this video and sharing my story, because when suicides are publicized in the media, it actually triggers a spike of suicides. So I did think twice about sharing this, but I think there's also no better time because at this time people are in a sense open to hearing about that, and if there is a spike, if people are thinking about how they can help, how they can support others, then we might be able to prevent more of those kinds of strategies. I think there is increasingly less of that culture of we don't talk about this, but at the same time I'm not sure that's enough, because it's fine to talk about it when it's out there, but when it becomes personal, people don't really want to share their struggles, don't want to share what they're going through, because they're afraid that they'll be judged, and there's still that stigma attached to having depression or experiencing suicidal thoughts or having a mental illness. So I think one of the challenges is that if you're someone who's never experienced suicidal thoughts or never attempted suicide, it's almost impossible to imagine how someone can get to that point. And on the other hand, if you're someone who is struggling with depression or with suicidal thoughts, it's also very difficult to explain. So I think I just want to do like a small bit to help to bridge that gap and kind of bring understanding and just to find ways that we can better address and deal with some of these issues. So I think a lot of the reason why I'm sharing this is because it's very personal to me, and I do believe in shining the light by sharing my story, because I've been through some dark times, and so to the point where as a teenager I attempted suicide. I remember waking up in the hospital, and I wasn't relieved. You'd think I'd be relieved, but no, I was disappointed, angry even, that I had almost failed to complete my suicide. And I remember there was this doctor, and she was, I feel like she was an angel, because she would come and she would talk to me, and I felt like someone cared, someone actually was reaching out to me. So she had studied at the high school that I was studying at, and she was encouraging me because I had wanted to study medicine, and so just sharing and just really being there for me made a huge difference. I was discharged, I went home, I went back to school, we never talked about it, it was like nothing happened. So I think even in school, like I never really talked about it. It was just one of those things that we pretended never happened. And through that I realized that deep down, I think a part of me fought to stay alive. I think a part of me wanted to live. And it's a scary place to be, where you don't trust yourself not to kill you at any moment. So it's almost like part of you wants to live, but part of you wants to die. So yeah, how do you, there's almost like an internal wrestle as well, because you're conflicted about that. And I think what helped me, and I think I'm one of the lucky ones, because that was a season that I went through, was that I learned to remember in the darkness that there's light, even when I couldn't see it, even when I couldn't feel it. Yeah, I learned to remember that there is light, and I think I was able to tap into a part of me that wanted to live, past the pain, past the helplessness, past the despair, and I think that really helped me to, I guess, get through that. I think one of the things that people don't realize is a lot of people who attempt suicide don't actually want to die. A lot of them, so if it's not under the category of like mental illness, a lot of it is people who are in dark seasons, who are really just struggling to get by, to live with the pain. And in my experience, there was a point at which the pain encapsulated me, it engulfed me to the point where I no longer saw or felt or thought of anything outside of the pain. And when you get to that point, it felt like my whole world was pain. And I wasn't really thinking about my family or anything like that. Like, I remember I wrote a note, I left a letter, and I've read it again, and you know, I said goodbye to them, and I was like, I'm sorry to cause you pain, but at that moment, what I was feeling, the pain I was feeling, overwhelmed everything else. Like, this was the only way out of that pain. It was like the pain was so much, too much to bear, that even if there was another way out, I didn't believe I could wait the pain out to find another way. So I think that's really the simplest way I can put it, that there is a level of pain that you can experience that engulfs your world. And I guess I'm tempted to say it's almost a break from reality. It closes you off to anything else. So it's not something you can reason with, because it's just so overwhelming. It's just so all engulfing, that it just takes, it just takes everything out of you. So you see nothing else, you feel nothing else. The pain is blinding. And so I think the sad thing is, we don't shame people for going to see a nutritionist to talk about their health and their diet. We don't shame people for signing up for a gym and getting a personal trainer. We don't shame people for seeing a dentist or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever it is. But we do shame people for going to see a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And I think that that's something that definitely needs to change, because it's just like all the other things where you can get help to manage that. You can get help to deal with all of that. So in college, I went through another dark season, and what happened there, what was different was, I called a friend and I told her, you know, I just need to come and stay over. And she said, okay. When I showed up, she looked at me and she was like, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not okay. And she said, do you want to talk about it? I said, no. And she was like, okay. And so I stayed there, I think a couple of weeks. So she just went about doing her thing. Like, she'd go to uni, come back, feed the dogs, feed me. And I was seeing the uni counselor as well at that time. So I think it would help if we lifted the stigma, that more people would feel that they're in a place where they can actually reach out to a friend and say, hey, I'm in a dark season. Can I just come and hang out and just spend time with you? I just need someone to help shine the light, or I just need someone to talk to. Or, you know, if friends can actually say, hey, you know what, if you are really feeling that down, maybe you should go and talk to a therapist or a psychologist or whatever it is, and we can encourage people to actually get the help that they need. So I think part of it is sometimes we lack self-awareness, sometimes we lack close enough friends, but I think sometimes it's also we are afraid that people will judge us, that we are incapable of dealing with the hand that life has dealt us, and so we would rather almost risk our lives to save our ego. And again, that's just my experience as someone who's gone through that, who has survived a suicide attempt. And the reality is there are many people who don't. There are many people who don't make it to the other side. There are many people who lose that battle. And I am one of the lucky ones. I think there's lots of people who struggle with mental illness that incapacitates them. It makes them unable to live any other way. I read this week about the parents who live on constant suicide watch because their kids are constantly, multiple times a week, attempting to kill themselves. And every morning, like, these parents wake up wondering if their child made it through the night. And my heart just goes out to them. But there's also people for whom it's a temporary season. It's a season of darkness. It's not mental illness that, you know, you have to carry with you the rest of your life. Some people do, but for others, it really is just a time where you just need help. Even the strongest of us sometimes need a helping hand. So I think it's really just being willing to be open, being willing to be vulnerable, and to reach out. So I guess the point of this is, first of all, be compassionate. We live in a world of social media and likes, and it's so easy to just see the surface, to see the veneer of someone's life. But I think if we can, be willing to look deeper, be willing to connect deeper with people, and not judge. I think it's, I think a lot of times when someone actually says they're struggling, the temptation is to laugh it off because it's awkward and uncomfortable. You know, you don't know how to help them. You don't know how to sit with them in their pain. But I think we need to stop doing that. As a culture, we need to be able to just really empathize, to reach out. And it's fine if you can't help them. If you can, then hold the space for them, be there for them. But if you can't, just be compassionate. And I think secondly is support the organizations that can support people. So that means if you can just be even familiar, be aware that they exist, so that when people need help, you can actually point them in the right direction. If you can give your time, then volunteer if you have that capacity. If you can give financially, support those kinds of organizations. So I know in KL we have organizations like Befrienders, so they are a hotline that people can call. We have organizations like CLM who provide counseling if people can't afford it. They can provide those kinds of services. So I think in any way that we can, it is really to support these organizations, raise awareness that they exist, and make it so that it is not a shameful thing that people actually go and seek help. And I think thirdly, if you are struggling, if you do need help, reach out. That's all I can say. People care. They may not know how to show it. They may not know how to express it, but most people do care. And I think it's just finding that one person, that one bright light in the darkness, that someone who's willing to just stand with you as you go through that dark season. So be open, be vulnerable. It's scary. It's scary to reach out. It's scary to admit that you're struggling. It's scary to admit that you're in a dark place. But what's scarier is what might happen if you don't. If you just let things continue, you might find yourself somewhere where you never expected that you'd be. And that's what happened to me. I think we are not all happy plastic people. We get hurt, we bleed, we bruise, and that's not just physically but emotionally and mentally as well. So if you really are struggling, there are people who can help you. Call befrienders, call a friend, just reach out, get help. You are not alone. You don't have to be alone. And I think that's really just what I wanted to share, that yeah, if you've been through this, share your story. There's lots of people who are going through that struggle right now, and they don't have a voice, and they need us to share our stories. We need to lift that stigma. We need to raise awareness that this happens. This is happening more and more. And in a world where people are more and more isolated, they live in front of a screen. We need to be able to reach out and connect. So be compassionate, support the organizations that are doing good work. And if you're struggling, please reach out.